Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live broadcast, Synchronize Clinical Trial in RWD Strategies. I'm Mike Holland, editor at Pharmaceutical Executive, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. We are pleased to bring you this webcast presented by Pharmaceutical Executive and sponsored by Komodo. I'd like to share a statement from our sponsor. At Komodo Health, we combine the world's most comprehensive view of patient encounters with innovative algorithms and decades of clinical expertise to power our healthcare map, the industry's most precise view of the U.S. healthcare system. We have a few important announcements before we begin. This webcast is designed to be interactive, and we encourage you to ask questions during the event. You can submit questions by typing them in the Q&A box, which can be found on the right-hand side of your screen. You can enlarge the slideshow by clicking on the small square icon in the upper right-hand corner of the slideshow window, or by hovering your mouse over the lower right-hand corner and dragging the window to the desired size. The slides will advance automatically during the event. If you have any technical problems viewing or hearing this presentation, please click on the question mark Help widget in the dock at the bottom of your presentation window. I would now like to introduce today's speaker. We are pleased to be joined today by Kwame Marfo. Kwame is the Market Strategy and Innovation Lead for Clinical Development at Komodo Health. He has 15+ years of experience in the healthcare industry, working in strategy and operation leadership roles across manufacturing, technical operations, commercial, and R&D. Prior to Komodo, Kwame served as Director of Insights and Analytics for Roche Genentech's Global Clinical Operations. He graduated with a BS in Chemical Engineering from Stanford University and an MBA in Corporate Strategy and Market Analysis from the University of California, Berkeley. Thank you for joining us today. Please get us started.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and hello everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for today's conversation. A conversation on how we can synchronize clinical trial and real-world data strategies to unlock so much more value in the world of clinical development. Again, super interactive conversation for today, so please feel free to ask questions throughout the entire discussion, and I'll definitely make sure we carve out time towards the end to address them. So here's the agenda for today. How we want to go about it is really to kind of level set with what I'm sure most of you know or have experienced around some of the limitations of historical data silos, especially as it pertains to healthcare data. And then we're going to walk through a series of use cases and case studies to show how real-world data is actually breaking down some of these barriers and enabling a lot much more value in the world of clinical development. Some of this stuff is currently happening. Some of this stuff is actually possible to happen today due to the connectivity and technology we have available to us across the healthcare data ecosystem. We'll then also look into the world of actual patients and not the data that the patients give, and really start to talk about some of the social determinants of health, specifically through the lens of race and ethnicity. And then we'll end with showing you how easy it is to actually access a lot of the insights that stem from this real world data through technology. The data is one thing, but then being able to actually access them through software solutions is another thing to drive for impact. So that's the agenda we have. And to start, I want to level set with the mission of Komodo Health. You heard about the introduction of Komodo Health at the beginning. But I really want to level set and double down on our mission. Our mission here at Komodo Health is to reduce the global burden of disease. And the way we do this is by building software solutions that are able to connect siloed healthcare data in a way where we're able to actually create meaningful insights for the patients that we all serve and providing them lasting impact. And that is our mission. So let's jump into some of the historical data silos that I'm sure you've all been experienced with and see how they can be limiting in terms of driving value across clinical development. As we all know, healthcare data is hard to piece together. Depending on your vantage point, depending on the access you may have to a particular data set, you might see the event of a first sign of a health issue, and then you might see what appears to be a second line of therapy. And you know intuitively that there's more that pertains to that patient journey, but you just don't have visibility to it. And all of this is fundamentally because it is very hard to stitch this data together. It's a huge challenge across the industry, specifically for the world of clinical development. On a personal note, my wife actually had a minor outpatient surgery yesterday. The procedure went well. She's recovering at home with me today, and she's in high spirits. But as she was prepping for that surgery, she actually switched employers. And as you all probably would imagine, that related to her actually also having to switch healthcare providers and her insurance. And unfortunately, she had to go all the way back to provide a whole bunch of information that she had provided to her previous insurer to get her procedure finally approved. And a lot of that is because of the fact that this healthcare data we know it's not connected, and it's very hard to piece together. In the world of clinical development specifically, we see the same thing. We know that clinical trials have generated so much evidence and brought so many breakthrough therapies to our industry. But as a company is investing in a clinical trial and collecting that clinical trial data, they're collecting very, very specific information that can validate that that drug is safe and effective. And unfortunately, there's a wealth of additional information that is not actively being collected as part of that clinical trial, but can be extremely useful to actually understanding the journeys of patients. This can pertain to some of the historical data of the patients in the trial. And this, again, is outside of the stuff that the sponsor might be screening for as part of their inclusion-exclusion criteria. As patients are enrolling and actively going through that clinical trial, and yes, collecting the clinical trial specific data, there's also a wealth of additional concurrent data that patients are actually also generating during the trial. That data tends to sit in a different data silo. And then most importantly, or equally importantly, after the trial, where a sponsor may not have access to those specific patients continue to engage with the healthcare system, and there's a wealth of data that is continuously generated. But again, unfortunately, this data tends to sit in different data silos, and it is not all fully integrated and connected. And it therefore becomes really difficult to understand that full patient journey and history. As a result, there could be underlying challenges of understanding baseline health and healthcare costs, understanding the long-term effectiveness and safety of a particular therapy. Maybe there could be some unexplainable adverse events where if we had a broader perspective as to the history of patients, we can help inform that, or even some hidden factors that might have made a group of patients actually ineligible for a specific trial. So many challenges that exist because of the fact that a lot of this data is not actively connected together. The good thing for us is that we actually live in a world today where we're actually able to connect this data and get a full view of that patient journey. We have the underlying technology to do this in a privacy-preserving way across the healthcare system, and also do it in a way where we're actually able to ingest and link to other data sets to surface even more insights. And this is exactly what Komodo Health has been able to do, and has become the foundation of us to build some fascinating software solutions to actually service our customers within the world of clinical development as they're thinking through clinical trials. Now, we've talked about the data, but fully have to appreciate that it's not just about the data, it's about what you do with the data. And yes, everything does start with having a representative data sample. And again, we've just spoken about the challenges of having a lot of this data being siloed off. But it's important to actually generate insights from this data and to leverage software solutions to help facilitate that. But even so, more importantly, it's about how we leverage those insights to drive impact to the patients that we're all serving. And this is exactly what is possible today in the world of clinical development. We're able to connect historical data to clinical trial data. We're able to connect in the concurrent data that patients might be generating as they're going through a clinical trial. And then after that specific trial, we're actually able to connect post-trial data into the same environment. And this begins to unlock so many additional possibilities that are based on a better understanding of our trial participants. We can interrogate this data set to understand how we could potentially optimize protocol design, site selection. We can explore building external control arms. We can explore some long-term follow-up and safety efficacy measures without actually having to start a brand new trial. And then also, again, have a sense of the underlying social determinants of health that might in fact impact patients. And we'll begin to walk through some of these case examples to actually bring this to life. But I do want to emphasize that this all starts with the patient journey and being able to actually connect in with a lot of the available data and do it in a way that is privacy preserving to surface of insights. So here's an example of diabetic macular edema, which is a disease which tends to lead to vision loss in people who are suffering from diabetic retinopathy, which is a complication of diabetes. So we actually went in and interrogated our underlying data set through our software solutions, and we're actually able to service about 530,000 patients that have been diagnosed with that disease. And when we looked at the longitudinal history that we have access to, we're actually able to see about 115,000 unique events across that group of patients. And here, a unique event pertains to a specific procedure that a patient received, a diagnosis that they had, again, outside of the diabetic macular edema diagnosis in of itself, and or some of the prescriptions for different drugs that they received. And there were about 47 million connections across these events. So huge amount of complexity, but so much richness, so much depth, so much wealth of data here that could be interrogated to begin to surface patient insights that can help across the clinical development landscape. And I'll show a video of this network. You see a picture of it there, where each node in this network represents one of those unique events. That's, again, a procedure, a diagnosis, or prescription. And each line represents a group of patients moving from one event to another. The thickness and the color of the line represent the number of patients that are actually moving from those events. So you begin to see how a specific event, like a specific diagnosis or procedure, can actually impact the network and drive it in a particular way. And maybe that's a point of some further research for some of your clinical scientists or for your specific clinical trial. So we can go ahead and play that so you can kind of get a sense of this. So again, you'll see each node there is tagged as a particular event. And as you move it, you see how it interacts with the rest of the network. One other thing to highlight is that, as you saw, the map in the network was moving. It was alive. And that's because our underlying data is alive and accurate and current. It's living and breathing. Patients are engaging with the healthcare system daily. And so the network continues to change as the patients are receiving new diagnoses, new procedures, and new prescriptions. So this is alive and breathing, and that's one of the beauties of being able to connect all of this data. So it all starts with that patient journey and being able to connect all of this in a way that can be deployed with other software solutions to surface up insights. So we can jump into some of that right now. So the first use case is around. So the first use case is around, is this? Just want to make sure the video is not presented again. Apologies for that technical difficulty. Okay, we're good. All right, great. So the first use case is around the astronomical cost that I'm sure we're all aware with the challenges pertaining to trial planning and execution. there's so many delays that unfortunately happen in clinical trials as far as recruitment of patients. And about 85% of the trials may fail to retain all the patients that they desired for. About 41% may have delays in patient recruitment. And we know how expensive it is to bring a lot of these life-saving therapeutics to market. So there's a lot to be said about being able to improve the ability to recruit patients into clinical trials. And this is an area where real-world data can help. Fully appreciating that the challenges of recruiting and retaining patients in a clinical trial are 100% multifaceted, but we still believe there's a play and a space for real-world data to definitely help in this. And this is exactly what we did for one of our customers who was in the blood cancer space, where they had a phase 3 trial. It was delayed, unfortunately, for over a year. And in 18 months, they had only been able to screen about 30 patients, of which 10 were recruited into the trial. And this is a place where we deploy one of our products, a product specifically called Pulse, which allows for customers to interrogate these patient journeys to actually surface up in near real time patients that will be screening eligible for their specific trial. And this is exactly what we did for that customer. Within the course of a few months, we were actually able to identify 77 patients that were screening eligible and also be able to identify their care teams. So in as much as our data is tokenized and de-identified on the patient side, we actually are able to see the setting of care and the care team of these patients and leverage that for outreach to see if their patients might be interested in participating in a clinical trial, or even if their care team is aware of the fact that a specific clinical trial that their patients might be eligible for exists. So this is what we did, and we're able to help that client get that trial back on track to the tune of saving several millions of dollars as far as the delays that they were experiencing. And so one clear example, again, of how leveraging that rich patient journey through a software solution that is able to interrogate that patient journey and surface up in near real time patients that might qualify to be screening eligible for a trial can actually drive in. The next area is around building an external control arm. So as you can imagine, in specific rare diseases or maybe types of oncology, where you might have small patients, we can actually interrogate, again, these patient journeys, specific interests, because we understand their histories, and we're actually able to surface different attributes of them, such as their age, their gender, and other demographics. And we can actually create what would be a control arm in the real world through the real world data. And this will be able to save sponsors time from being able to actually go into the real world to recruit these patients at the control arm. And we're able to do this through the technology we have available today. And the use case in this case was for a cohort of non-small cell lung cancer, where we're able to interrogate patients that would have qualified into a control arm for that study and be able to track their real world data relative to the standard of care that exists and leverage that as the control arm for the specific study. So a huge amount of savings there in time and effort for that trial. Now, switching gears a bit to actually consider that, patients are people, are not just data. And I know we've talked a lot about data today, but we have to put that in context, that patients are actively engaging in the healthcare system and actively engaging in the real world. And there are actually social determinants of health that have been documented and researched that impact outcomes. So we have to be aware of that and put that within context. One of the main ones that I'm sure all of you have come across, or at least is top of mind recently, especially with the latest FDA guidance on increasing the racial and ethnic diversity of clinical trial participants, is race and ethnic diversity. And the reason this is important is because the evidence that's being generated in a clinical trial, to a large extent, should be reflective of the real world. And in the real world, there are social determinants of health. Here's an example, again, within the diabetic retinopathy space, where for diabetic retinopathy, we see some published data on a prevalence rate of about 46% to white Americans versus 26% Black Americans. But if you actually look at some of the therapies that have been approved for this specific indication, and you unpack that for the race and ethnic breakdown of the trial populations, you see that it's not fully representative of the published data on the prevalence. And a lot of this is again multifaceted, multi-pronged here in terms of some of the challenges here. But again, we do believe that this is an area where real-world data can help tackle. And to be honest, even in the FDA guidance on increasing the racial and ethnic diversity of trial populations explicitly does call out real-world data as a tool to be leveraged in addressing this challenge. So one of the ways real-world data can help address this challenge is actually in terms of improving the accessibility of trials through the lens of influencing the decision on which clinical sites should be selected for a specific clinical trial. So we have access to race and ethnicity data within our Komodo healthcare map, our underlying data set, to the tune of about 215 million lives. And we actually interrogated that through our software solutions. And we looked at the top 20 US oncology hospitals for different breast, colon, pancreatic, and cervical cancers. And we all know that these are institutions that have led a lot of research and are most likely to be selected in a clinical trial, and rightfully so, because there's so many experts that exist there. But across all of the patients that are receiving treatment at these institutions, when we interrogated for some of the racial and ethnic breakdown of the patient populations, we saw that roughly about 25% of them were of patients of color. And when we looked around surrounding geographic areas of a sample of other potential sites that are engaged in research and could be great candidates for clinical trials, specifically maybe within the oncology space, we saw that there were other institutions that had a higher diversity of a patient pool. And so again, influencing the decision as to which additional sites to select for a specific trial relative to the different racial and ethnic makeup of the patients that are receiving care at these trials is a way where real-world data can directly influence the ability to improve the diversity of the trial populations. And again, we have the software solutions to help do this across the board. So with that, I'll actually we'll demo how easy it is to be able to do this with another product we have, which is called Prism. And it's a low-code, no-code solution where, again, you don't have to be a sophisticated data scientist to be able to query this data set. And I know the patient network that I showed up might be a bit daunting for folks who are not as data savvy, but this is definitely a way where you can interrogate the data directly and for some insights. So with that, I will put that in 1 second. So this is what Prism looks like. You're able to come in directly and again, not to be taken aback by seeing raw counts and numbers out the gate. Pretty intuitive setup. You're able to come in and type in directly different codes for different groups of patients that you're looking to identify. And again, these could be different ICD-10 codes, different procedure codes, or drug codes. If you know them, great. If not, we actually have a clinical innovations team that can help you figure out which codes might be relevant. And for the case of this example, I will stick to what we've been doing within diabetic macular edema. You come in and you type that. You see it quickly begins to already even populate potential codes for you. That intuitive. And then you can essentially select them directly. You can set a date range. So for this, let's go for about a year's worth of data. I'll go back to 2021. If needed, you can come in and create additional filters on some of the demographic data we have available. You can create filters on specific healthcare professionals in terms of if you wanted to see only specific specialties. And then you can come in and add additional filters. So you can say, I want the patients that had this diabetic macular edema diagnosis and maybe received a particular therapy. Therapy A. But for this, I'll pick up a therapy I know. Again, up. We'll put in the same date range. And again, you can change this to or not. Pretty intuitive. Forgot to name this. I'll name this as DME. You can continue to add so many additional filters, and you can add multiple codes and bulk into any of these. Pretty intuitive. And once you've finished creating your cohort and given it a name, you essentially hit this report to run, and it begins to submit that and run it. And so as it's running, which is actually pretty quick, I'll show you exactly what the results look like. So these are what the results would look like. It actually would show you how many patients showed up within your first filter versus your second filter, the different healthcare providers that were associated with those patients and their institutions, the healthcare organizations. You'll see the breakdown across different years. You'll have a high-level sense of the demographics. And again, we also have access to race and ethnicity data, which I'll show you comes through in the download of this report. You'll see the breakdown of the total count of providers and facilities, again, healthcare organizations, high-level stats on the top specialties, and then to the extent relevant, the payer mix and payer distribution and some of the top codes associated with the patients that were part of that resulted in that cohort. So again, very intuitive, very simple to be able to query and interrogate that underlying complex data, such as within the patient network that I showed you. That's straightforward. And you come in and create multiple cohorts depending on which questions you're looking to answer. So once you're able to create those cohorts, you actually also have an opportunity to download additional information. And I'll show you exactly what the download looks like. So this is an example of what the download looks like. I've blinded some of the provider information here, not wanting to call anyone out specifically, but you you see the provider information. We actually, again, have identifiable information on the provider side. You see their specialty, and then most importantly, you get a sense of the patient count. So for that specific provider, how many patients do they have that met the criteria of the cohort you just created? And as I've alluded to, the race and ethnicity breakdown of that specific patient panel. So again, this is an area where you can pull this in to understand the actual mix from a race and ethnicity perspective for a specific provider, for a specific disease, an indication, or inclusion-exclusion criteria for a particular trial, and leverage this plus additional data to help inform your decision of your site selection for your specific trial in a way to directly improve or increase the likelihood of being able to increase the diversity of the patient population within your specific trial. All right. So the final use case I wanted to chat with you all about is a use case which also continues to build on understanding social determinants of health as it pertains to like understanding the long-term effectiveness and safety of a specific actually endure over time. And this could be to the tune of 5 to 15 years, where again, it might be very costly. We've talked about some of the costs associated with executing clinical trials to be able to run these trials for that long. But again, we live in a world today where we have the connectivity and technology to actually be able to connect in this patient data, tokenize it in a way where we're able to connect it into our underlying healthcare map data at Komodo and continue to monitor these patients after the trial to get a sense of how they are of some of the social determinants of health, understand if there are other factors that are beginning to influence how different sub-patient populations are persisting over time. So again, this is and this can be done in a way where you don't necessarily have to come in and create another phase 4 trial or maybe phase 3 trial, depending on your exact setup, and being done in a very seamless way through the technology and connectivity that we have available to us today. As you can see and probably surmise, there's significant cost savings here and acceleration to getting to some of this data through leveraging the technology this way. So talked a lot about different technology. I actually gave you a little bit of a preview of exactly how easy it is to access some of this real world data and the wealth. But I know it's only the beginning. It's only the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. There's so many solutions that we built to support a lot of the needs in clinical development as it pertains to tying in real world data. And we've talked about some of these, about revealing target sites, improving the operational feasibility of your trials, modeling some of the inclusion exclusion criteria and the impact of that, and diversifying and expediting the trial recruitment. So there's so much that can be done. And we actually have the software suite to allow for this. So again, you do not have to be a sophisticated data scientist or data savvy user to be able to leverage any of these products to get to these insights, because it's about the insights into the impact. So I highlighted Pulse, which was in the first case example in terms of our near real-time alerting product. There's another product called Aperture, which provides deep profiling on different sites and investigators. Another product, Prism, which I actually demoed, which allows you to create different cohorts, and you can see how that can help you think through managing your portfolio of drugs as well as protocol design. And then for the actual data savvy, data science, data sophisticated users, we do have a product which is called Sentinel, which gives you direct access to the wealth of the underlying patient level data for you to interrogate directly, build your own algorithms, and and leverage that for different modeling. So a wide range of products, a wide range of technologies that are built on top of this rich, comprehensive patient data, structured in a way where we're actually able to see these patient journeys. So in closing, I do want to go back to the top here and really emphasize that, and I'm sure you all can agree that healthcare data is hard to piece together. And because of this, there's so many challenges and so many inefficiencies that exist with being able to leverage this for insights. But we now live in a world where this is possible, and we know this is essential for success. So imagine a world where you can actually understand the journeys of all of your patients and how you can leverage that for insights, and then most importantly, pull those insights through to have impacts for the patients we serve. This is exactly what we are enabling at Komodo, but fully appreciate that we're enabling this through partnerships all over the place with so many different customers. And hopefully you've enjoyed this conversation. We're about to open for Q&A, but before we do that, I'd love to send over you all to a poll to get a sense of which of these use cases resonated the most with you, which of these use cases you would love to learn more about, and then we can jump into an open Q&A session.
Okay, so before we start the Q&A session, we're going to ask our audience to participate in a brief polling question. Please click directly on the screen to enter your answers. Here's the first question. Select which topic you'd want to learn more about. Incorporating race and ethnicity insights into your clinical trial strategy, design, and execution. Accelerating your patient recruitment with near real-time patient alerting. Improving operational feasibility of your trials. Enriching your evidence generation strategy with linking your trial data to real-world data. Leveraging real-world data to model your trial's inclusion-exclusion criteria. And revealing your target sites and investigators for your trials. Those answers again are incorporating race and ethnicity insights into your clinical trial strategy, design, and execution. Accelerating your patient recruitment with near real-time patient alerting. Improving the operational feasibility of your trials, enriching your evidence generation strategy with linking your trial data to real-world data, leveraging real-world data to model your trial's inclusion-exclusion criteria, or revealing your target sites and investigators for your trials. Okay, so it looks like 47.6% of everyone here shows enriching your evidence generation strategy with linking your trial data to real-world data. And then next up would be leveraging real-world data to model your trial's inclusion-exclusion criteria at 19%. At 14%, incorporating race and ethnicity insights into your clinical trial strategy, design, and execution. And then next was accelerating your patient recruitment with near real-time patient alerting at 9.5%. And then coming in at 4.8%, improving the operational feasibility of your trials and revealing your target sites and investigators for your trials.
Thank you for participating.
Thank you for such an informative. Sorry about that.
Go ahead.
Thank you for such an informative presentation. Before we get started on the question and answer session, I would like to remind our audience how to submit questions. You can submit questions by typing them in the Q&A box, which can be found on the right-hand side of the presentation window. And our first question is, how current is your data?
How current is our data? Our data is very current. So to give you context, and I know I didn't speak about this during the discussion, but we've been able to strike very strategic relationships with different providers and payers to the tune of being able to get visibility into about 330 million patient lives across the United States. And we actually update our data daily. So on average, we're seeing about 15 million updates in terms of new encounters being fed into our underlying data, and this is happening continuously. The other thing I'll say is we really have indexed on the notion of being able to understand the patient journey. And so what that means is we are constantly interrogating new data sets and linking those in, or at least providing a way to link that into our underlying data to the extent where customers may need that. So a good example would be specific lab data. We have relationships with some lab providers to be able to link into their data sets in a seamless way as well. So data is updated daily, again to the tune of about 15 million encounters being refreshed, and with the access points you'll have access to that current data. Thank you.
Awesome. So next question is, are there any specific TAs you cover?
Are there any specific TA therapeutic areas we cover? I believe so. If there's a claim against a specific therapeutic area, we will see it. So we don't necessarily, we're not necessarily focused on one therapeutic area over the other. Again, it's all about understanding that patient journey. The foundation of that patient journey is claims data. And so as long as there's a claim against that indication, we will see it. We will have our AI engine be able to connect that and service it up.
Next question, how do I access your data and products?
How do I access your data and product? Okay, so we're a technology-based company, software-based company, so we've structured things in a way to provide annual subscriptions to our products. So that's the primary way to get access to that product suite, depending on your needs. So it's a subscription-based model that we offer. And again, it's more so to our products that are built on top of our data or allow for you to interrogate our data directly versus direct access to the raw unprocessed data. The closest thing we have to that is our Sentinel product, which does give you direct access for sophisticated data users to our patient level data that has been curated, processed, and connected for you, so you don't have to worry about that. But primarily, we are a subscription-based. It is a subscription-based model for our products. Next.
Our next question comes from Lawrence Friedhoff. So he asks, you may be able to see a patient who might qualify for a study, but how do you find the real person since the data is all anonymous?
Yeah, so the data is de-identified for sure, and we do this to maintain privacy, HIPAA compliance, and we actually do this before any data ever comes to Komodo, so we definitely don't touch any protected healthcare information. That being said, the care team, we have information on the care team. So again, like I demoed with the product, we're able to see that Dr. Lawrence actually has seen a patient that meets XYZ criteria, and we're able to get the contact information of Dr. Lawrence and be able to reach out to said doctor to see if they're able to have a conversation with their patient, or even aware if there's a specific trial. So that's the way we go about that, because to your point, it is correct. We do not house or hold any protected health information, identifiable information or data on patients, and we ensure that through different certification processes. Hopefully that answers that question. Thank you.
So our next question has several parts to it. Do you want me to ask them all at once, or do you want me to go one at a time?
Just go at it, and then we'll see.
All right, so the first part, when building the external control arm using RWD, how do we ensure they are meeting specific inclusion-exclusion criteria that may not be captured in the available data set? This brings me to my next question. How is this informed consent gathered in this situation? I may have missed it because of video first.
Okay. Yeah. So with creating an external control arm, as I demoed with the one product we have, Prism, you actually are able to include different inclusion-exclusion criteria out the gate to ensure that you're being very specific with the patient cohort that you're creating, to the extent where that maybe data may not be surfaced directly in through a claim. We've designed our underlining data in a way where we can linking additional data sets. So maybe it's a lab result. So we can actually link that in and query on top of that to get to that refined patient population that would provide a lot of confidence that this is representative of what an actual control arm would be in the real world. So that's how we get to that level of specificity. As far as the informed consent, typically that's something the end customer would manage as part of the consent process on a specific clinical trial. And I would imagine you're thinking of that through the lens of maybe continuing to capture some data on patients post-trial. Typically, that would be handled by the sponsor who's executing that clinical trial. And once that's set up, then we can connect in and continue to have a perspective of how the patients progress even post-trial. Thanks.
So next up, does Prism get the dynamic and specific information from any common healthcare data source?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Does Prism get the dynamic and specific information from any common healthcare data source?
Yeah, so I guess the way to answer this is what data is Prism interrogating as it's building those queries. So like we have strategic relationships with different providers and payers where we actually have access to their what we call payer complete, their direct data, and that's actually what has allowed us to connect these disparate data sources in a way to surface these insights. So those are the data sources that Prism is interrogating. As I mentioned, we're able to linking additional data sets as well. And once we're able to do that, we can actually spin off other instances for Prism and or Sentinel for the sophisticated data user to be able to interrogate even those linked data sets directly. But the standard default underlining data that Prism interrogates is our healthcare data map, which is primarily based off of claims data, which has been enriched with other sources from other providers, EHR, EMR sources. So for instance, the race and ethnicity data where we're capturing is an example of that. Thank you.
Sure thing. So this is another multi-part question. How are records curated? Is AI involved or is it a human effort? What are the guidelines for record uplift? If there are multiple sources, for example, showing diagnosis, which one takes priority? And how is provenance maintained?
Yeah, so this is where I think we've done things exceptionally well, and kudos to the data science team at Komodo, where this is not a manual process. We developed the underlying technology and software solutions to be able to do this. As far as being able to connect across different data sources, we have a strategic partnership with Datavant. They are tokenization partner, so we leverage their technology to be able to tokenize and have high fidelity there. And that allows us to be able to connect different tokens, or i.e. patients, across different data sets, and kind of keep that live and living and breathing as well. So that's how we go about that, and hopefully that answered that question, even though it's multifaceted.
Our next question comes from someone who missed the first 20 minutes. They're asking, what is the data source you used in your demo?
Yeah, so that's our underlining healthcare map, which is our proprietary data within Komodo, which I just talked about too, which is primarily a claims-based data that we have strategic relationships with different payers, and we've also been able to enrich that with other data sources from other providers. So that was what we demoed, but again, that provides a lot of value and richness, but there's also the opportunity to link in additional data sets to help out as well. Thanks.
Next question, are you HIPAA compliant?
Yes, we are HIPAA compliant. So we actually do not touch any protected health information. All of that is de-identified before it comes onto the Komodo premises. So and we leverage DataVan as our strategic partner in terms of being able to tokenize that data. That allows us to maintain maintain HIPAA compliance. So yes, we are HIPAA compliant. Thank you.
And next question, can you speak more to your race and ethnicity data?
Yeah, I can speak to the race and ethnicity data. So as I shared in the discussion, or at least in the Q&A, with the relationships we have access to about 330 million patient lives across the United States. We made a strategic investment towards the end of last year to be able to surface the race and ethnicity data across our healthcare map, our underlying data. So today we have that to the tune of about 215 million lives, with huge investments to continue to even increase that number. That being said, that number is actually, if we look at the breakdown across different racial and ethnic groups for that 215 million, it pretty much mirrors the US Census population. So pretty robust data set that we have, and we're pretty excited to begin to leverage it to help address some of the challenges with social determinants of health that we talked about in the discussion. Thank you.
Sure thing. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to thank the audience for attending and for participating in today's event. I would also like to thank our sponsor, Komodo, for making today's educational webcast possible. We would like to ask everyone in the audience to participate in a brief survey. You can see the survey to the right of your screen. You will receive an email alerting you when this webcast will be available for replay. We invite you to forward that announcement to your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. Thanks all for joining. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.